Before we talk about the scariest sound in the universe, we need to understand something deeply unsettling, something most people never think about, and that is the fact that silence itself is not peaceful when it stretches across infinity. Because space is not just empty darkness, it is a vast stage where colossal forces move slowly, violently, and without mercy. And for most of human history, we believed space was completely silent, a quiet backdrop to the stars. But silence does not mean nothing is happening. It only means we cannot hear it. And when you realize that the universe has been active for over 13 billion years, constantly expanding, colliding, tearing itself apart, and rebuilding, the idea that it makes no sound starts to feel suspicious, because on Earth, every powerful event makes noise, earthquakes roar, volcanoes scream, oceans crash endlessly. So why would the largest event imaginable happen in perfect silence? And the answer is not that space is calm. The answer is that space has no air to carry sound to our ears. But sound itself still exists as vibrations, as waves of energy moving through matter. And when scientists began studying the universe more closely, they realized that on a cosmic scale, these vibrations are everywhere, hidden in gas clouds, trapped in space-time itself, waiting to be translated, and that realization led to a terrifying question. If we could hear the universe, what would it sound like? Would it be beautiful, chaotic, or horrifying? And when astronomers finally found a way to convert cosmic vibrations into sound we could understand, the result was not music, it was not harmony, it was something far more disturbing, something slow, deep, and ancient, something that felt less like a noise and more like a presence. And this is where our story truly begins, not with a scream, but with a low, endless moan echoing across hundreds of thousands of light years, produced by an object so extreme that it bends reality itself. An object that does not just exist in space, but dominates it, a supermassive black hole. And long before humans ever looked up at the stars, this sound was already playing, long before Earth formed, long before life existed, and it will continue long after we are gone. And the most frightening part is not that the sound exists, but that it proves the universe is not quiet. It is alive with forces so powerful that if space had air, the cosmos would never stop screaming. To understand where this terrifying sound comes from, we have to travel far beyond our galaxy, far beyond anything the human eye could ever see unaided, to a massive collection of galaxies known as the Perseus galaxy cluster, a region of space so enormous that it contains thousands of galaxies bound together by gravity, drifting through the universe like a slow-moving cosmic storm. And at the heart of this cluster lies something invisible, yet overwhelmingly powerful, a supermassive black hole, so large that it outweighs our sun by billions of times. And unlike the black holes people imagine from movies, this one is not quietly sitting in darkness. It is active, feeding, releasing energy, and shaping the environment around it in ways that are both fascinating and terrifying. Because as matter falls toward a black hole, it does not simply disappear, it heats up, accelerates, and releases enormous amounts of energy before crossing the point of no return. And in the Perseus cluster, this process created gigantic ripples in the surrounding hot gas so hot it glows in X-rays, gas that fills the space between galaxies like an invisible ocean. And when the black hole released bursts of energy, it sent pressure waves through this gas, similar to how a stone dropped into water creates ripples that spread outward. Except these ripples were larger than entire galaxies and powerful beyond comprehension. And these pressure waves are, in the most fundamental sense, sound, not sound as we hear it on Earth, but sound as vibration, as motion, as energy traveling through matter. And for years, scientists observed these ripples without fully realizing what they meant, until someone asked a simple but unsettling question: what if we could hear this? And when researchers finally converted these pressure waves into audible frequencies, shifting them into a range the human ear could perceive, the result was chilling, a deep, hollow tone, slow and repetitive, like a distant horn echoing through an endless void, a sound so low it exists far below the range of normal hearing, a sound you would not register with your ears, but with your body, with your bones, with the air vibrating inside your chest. And what makes this sound truly disturbing is not just how it feels, but how long it has been playing, because this is not a momentary event, not a brief explosion or a single pulse. This sound has been echoing through the Perseus cluster for millions of years, long before humans walked the earth, long before the first mammals existed, long before even the dinosaurs. And while civilizations rose and fell, while continents shifted and oceans formed, this cosmic sound continued, steady and relentless, spreading through space on a scale so vast it breaks the human mind. And when you imagine that sound traveling across hundreds of thousands of light years, passing through galaxies, through clouds of gas, through the remains of dead stars, you begin to understand why scientists described it as haunting, because it feels less like a noise and more like a message, a reminder of how small we are in a universe that operates on timescales and energy levels beyond our comprehension. And yet this is only one black hole in one cluster among billions scattered across the cosmos, which raises an even more unsettling thought. If one black hole can produce a sound like this, how many others are out there doing the same? How many deep cosmic groans are echoing through the universe right now, unheard and unfelt by us? And the reason we find this sound so frightening is not just because it comes from something dangerous, but because it reveals the universe as an active, dynamic place, not a quiet backdrop, but a constantly shifting environment filled with immense forces at work, forces that do not care about life, about planets, or about survival. And when scientists describe the Perseus black hole sound as the lowest note ever detected, they're not exaggerating, because it is so low that one full vibration takes millions of years to complete, meaning the universe itself is vibrating on a scale that makes human time feel insignificant. And once you truly grasp that idea, once you understand that space itself can ripple and resonate, it becomes impossible to see the night sky the same way again, because behind the beauty of the stars lies a hidden symphony of slow, ancient sounds, and the deepest, darkest note of all belongs to a black hole that has been singing its terrifying song since before humanity ever existed. What makes this sound even more unsettling is what it tells us about the true nature of black holes. Because despite how often they appear in movies and popular culture, black holes are not just cosmic vacuum cleaners mindlessly swallowing everything around them. They're engines of extreme physics, places where gravity becomes so intense that it reshapes space and time itself. And the sound from the Perseus cluster reveals that black holes do not simply destroy, they influence, regulate, and dominate entire galaxies, because the pressure waves that created this sound were not random. They were part of a feedback process, a cycle where the black hole releases energy that prevents surrounding gas from cooling too quickly and collapsing into new stars, meaning this single object was controlling the birth of stars across an entire galaxy cluster. And when you realize that the sound becomes more than a noise, it becomes evidence of a black hole acting like a cosmic conductor, setting the rhythm for galaxies billions of times larger than our own. And yet this control comes from something we cannot see, something that emits no light, something that exists as a dark absence in space, which makes the idea of it producing a sound deeply unsettling, because it challenges our instincts about reality. And as scientists studied this phenomenon further, they began to realize that sound is not the only thing black holes produce. They also generate gravitational waves, ripples in space-time itself caused by massive objects accelerating or colliding. And when two black holes merge, they send out a burst of gravitational waves so powerful that they stretch and compress space across the entire universe. And although these waves are not sound in the traditional sense, scientists often convert them into audio to help us understand them. And when you listen to these converted signals, you hear something eerie, a rising chirp that ends in a sudden silence, like a cosmic heartbeat stopping. And these sounds are terrifying not because they are loud, but because they are evidence of space-time itself, ringing like a bell, proving that reality is not rigid or stable, but flexible and vulnerable to extreme forces. And this realization forces us to confront an uncomfortable truth that the universe is not built for us. It is not designed to be safe or gentle. It is governed by laws that operate regardless of whether life can survive them. And the sound from the Perseus black hole is a reminder of that indifference because it continued for millions of years without witnesses, without listeners, without meaning. And yet when we finally translated it, it felt personal, as if the universe was revealing a secret it never intended us to hear. And psychologically, humans are deeply affected by low-frequency sounds because they are often associated with danger, earthquakes, storms, and approaching threats. And this is not coincidence. Low-frequency vibrations travel farther and penetrate deeper, making them ideal for signaling power. And the fact that the lowest sound ever detected comes from a black hole is almost poetic, because black holes represent the ultimate expression of dominance in the universe. Objects so powerful that they define their surroundings simply by existing. And when you imagine standing in space near the Perseus cluster, with this sound vibrating through an invisible ocean of hot gas, it becomes clear why scientists described it as haunting rather than exciting, because it feels less like discovery and more like intrusion, as if we have accidentally overheard something ancient and private, something that was never meant to be part of the human experience. And the fear does not come from the sound itself, but from what it implies, that the universe has layers of activity far beyond what our senses evolved to perceive, layers that could be revealed with the right tools. And once revealed, they cannot be forgotten, because every time you look at the night sky after knowing this, you are no longer just seeing stars. You are imagining vibrations traveling through gas, space-time rippling under immense gravity, and black holes quietly shaping the cosmos while emitting sounds so deep and slow that they exist on timescales longer than human civilization. And that thought leads to an even more disturbing question. If this is what we can hear now with our limited technology, what other sounds are out there waiting to be discovered? What deeper, darker notes are hidden in the fabric of the universe? And what will it mean for us when we finally hear them? As disturbing as the sound from the Perseus black hole is, it becomes even more frightening when you realize it is not unique, because the universe is filled with objects capable of producing sounds that would shatter our understanding of reality if we could hear them directly. And one of the most unsettling examples comes from neutron stars, the collapsed cores of massive stars that pack more mass than our sun into a sphere barely the size of a city. Objects so dense that a single teaspoon of their material would weigh billions of tons. And when neutron stars collide, they do not simply merge quietly. They send shock waves through space-time itself, ripples so powerful that they can be detected across the universe. And when scientists convert these gravitational waves into sound, the result is a sharp, rising signal followed by an abrupt cutoff, like a scream cut short, a cosmic death cry that marks the moment when two extreme objects become one. And unlike the deep moan of a black hole, these sounds feel sudden and violent, reminding us that the universe is capable of sudden destruction as well as slow, relentless power. And then there are the sounds of planets themselves, because even worlds can scream in their own way. As scientists discovered when they began studying radio emissions from Jupiter, emissions caused by its powerful magnetic field interacting with charged particles. And when these signals were translated into audio, the result was a chaotic, crackling howl that sounded disturbingly alive, more like a tortured machine than a planet. And this raises an unsettling realization. That sound is not limited to living things, that lifeless objects on a cosmic scale can produce noises that feel emotional, threatening, or wrong, simply because of the immense energies involved. And perhaps the most haunting sound of all is not tied to any single object, but to the universe itself, because shortly after the Big Bang, the universe was filled with pressure waves moving through hot plasma, creating vibrations that left an imprint still detectable today as the cosmic microwave background, often described as the echo of the Big Bang. And while this echo is not sound in the traditional sense, scientists can translate its data into audio, producing a faint, static-like hiss that represents the universe's earliest moments. And there is something deeply unsettling about hearing the afterimage of creation, because it means the universe has a memory, a record of its violent birth preserved across billions of years. And when you combine all of these sounds, the black hole's endless moan, the neutron star collision's sudden cry, Jupiter's eerie radio screams, and the faint echo of the Big Bang itself, a terrifying picture begins to form. Picture a universe that is not quiet or serene, but filled with constant activity, vibrations, and energy, most of it hidden from us only because our senses are too limited to perceive it. And the fear comes from knowing that if our ears were tuned differently, if space were filled with air, the cosmos would be unbearably loud, an endless barrage of roars, pulses, and groans layered on top of one another. And life, as we know it, might never have evolved in such an environment, which suggests that silence is not a feature of the universe, but a fragile gift given to us by physics, a thin veil protecting our minds from the overwhelming reality of cosmic forces at work. And once you understand that, once you realize that the universe is constantly vibrating with unimaginable power, the idea of space as a peaceful void disappears forever, replaced by the image of a restless, dynamic cosmos that never truly rests, never truly sleeps, and continues its immense, indifferent activity regardless of whether anyone is there to listen. And this leads to a final, deeply unsettling thought, that the scariest sound in the universe may not be the one we have already heard, but the one we have not yet discovered, the sound that will one day reveal just how fragile our understanding of reality truly is. When you sit with this idea long enough, the fear begins to change shape because it stops being about black holes or neutron stars and starts becoming about us, about humanity's place in a universe that operates on scales so vast and indifferent that our entire history is barely a flicker. And the sound from the Perseus black hole forces us to confront that uncomfortable truth, because while it was echoing through space for millions of years, life on Earth was struggling to even begin, single-celled organisms forming and disappearing while the universe continued its slow, powerful rhythm without noticing. And even now, as you listen to this story, that sound has not stopped. It is still propagating through hot gas, still vibrating across unimaginable distances, completely unaware that a species on a small planet has finally learned how to translate it into something meaningful. And there is something deeply humbling and frightening about that, because it reminds us that the universe does not communicate with us intentionally. It does not send messages or warnings. We are simply eavesdropping on processes that were never meant to be understood. And yet once we hear them, once we become aware of them, we cannot unhear them, because knowledge changes perception. And from this point forward, the night sky is no longer just a beautiful scattering of lights. It is a dynamic, restless environment filled with invisible waves moving through space and time. And this awareness can feel overwhelming, even unsettling, because humans evolved to survive on a planet where danger had clear sounds. A predator's growl, a storm's thunder, an earthquake's rumble, but cosmic sounds operate on scales so slow and deep that they bypass our instincts entirely, making them feel unnatural, alien, and wrong. And that is why the scariest sound in the universe is not loud or sudden. It is slow, ancient, and patient, a reminder that the greatest forces do not need to rush. They do not need drama or spectacle. They simply exist and persist, shaping everything around them over millions or billions of years. And in that sense, the black hole sound becomes symbolic of the universe itself, powerful, indifferent, and unconcerned with meaning. And yet, despite this indifference, humans continue to listen, to study, to convert vibrations into sounds and data into stories. Because curiosity is one of the few defenses we have against insignificance. And by listening to the universe, we assert that even if we are small, even if we are temporary, we are still capable of understanding. And there is something quietly brave about that, something almost rebellious, to take a sound that existed long before us and give it context, emotion, and fear. And perhaps that is why this sound affects us so deeply, because it sits at the intersection of awe and terror, reminding us that the universe is vast and dangerous, but also knowable, at least in fragments. And as our technology improves, we will hear more of these cosmic sounds, deeper vibrations, stranger signals, and each one will challenge our assumptions about reality, time, and our place within it. And one day we may discover a sound that makes the Perseus black hole seem gentle by comparison, a signal that reveals forces or events we have not yet imagined. And when that day comes, humanity will once again be forced to confront the same question this sound already asks us. Not whether the universe is scary, but whether we are prepared to truly listen. Because once you realize that the cosmos is not silent, that it is filled with endless, ancient vibrations, you begin to understand that silence was never the absence of sound. It was simply the limit of our hearing. And beyond that limit lies a universe that has been speaking all along. And now, after hearing about these sounds and what they represent, there is one final layer of fear that settles in quietly. Because the most unsettling realization is not about black holes or cosmic vibrations, but about perception itself, about the fact that reality is far larger and more active than the narrow slice we are capable of sensing. And this means that at every moment of your life, right now as you sit listening or watching, the universe is alive with movements and forces that completely bypass your awareness, waves passing through space, energy flowing between galaxies, space-time stretching and relaxing, all of it happening without sound, without light, without any signal your body can detect. And the scariest sound in the universe becomes terrifying not because of how it sounds, but because it proves that silence cannot be trusted, that quiet does not mean safe, calm, or empty. It only means hidden. And when you look up at the night sky after understanding this, the stars no longer feel like distant decorations. They feel like surface details covering something vast and restless beneath, like ripples on an ocean so deep we cannot see the bottom. And this perspective changes the way you think about existence, because it suggests that human experience is not centered in the universe, but floating within it, briefly intersecting with processes that will continue long after we are gone. And this can feel frightening. But it can also feel strangely grounding because it removes the illusion that everything revolves around us and replaces it with a more honest, if unsettling, truth that we are observers in a much larger story. Listeners who have only just begun to hear the faintest echoes of a cosmic symphony that has been playing since the beginning of time. And perhaps that is why the sound from the Perseus black hole lingers in the imagination, because it feels like the universe clearing its throat, reminding us of its presence, not in anger or malice, but in sheer scale and power. And if you think about it carefully, the fact that we can hear anything at all, that we can take data from a black hole hundreds of millions of light years away and turn it into sound, is itself extraordinary, because it means that despite our smallness, we are not completely disconnected. We are capable of touching the edges of something immense. And that connection is both terrifying and beautiful, because it tells us that the universe is not just something we live in. It is something we are part of, vibrating along with it whether we realize it or not. And maybe the true horror is not that the universe makes these sounds, but that one day, long after humanity has vanished, these sounds will continue without anyone left to hear them. Black holes will still hum. Galaxies will still collide. Space-time will still ripple. And the universe will go on expressing its power in total silence, once again, not because it has stopped, but because there will be no ears left to listen. And when you imagine that future, an endless cosmic soundscape playing to an empty audience, you realize that the scariest sound in the universe is also a reminder of how rare and fragile awareness truly is. And that right now, in this brief moment of cosmic time, we are lucky enough to listen. And as this realization settles in, another unsettling idea begins to emerge. One that lingers longer than any sound ever could. Because if the universe has been producing these vibrations since its earliest moments, then sound is not just a byproduct of cosmic events. It is a record, a kind of fossil left behind by forces that shaped reality itself. And this means that every ripple, every wave, every deep cosmic groan carries information about what happened when it happened. and how powerful it was, turning the universe into a vast archive written not in words or images, but in motion and resonance. And the scariest sound in the universe becomes frightening because it is not random noise. It is history speaking in a language we are only beginning to understand, a language that tells stories of collapse, creation, destruction, and unimaginable energy. And when scientists listen to these sounds, they're not just hearing black holes or neutron stars. They're listening to the universe remember itself. And that idea is deeply unsettling because memory implies continuity. It implies that the universe carries the imprint of everything that has ever happened within it, including events far more violent and extreme than anything we have yet detected. And this raises a chilling possibility that there may be sounds so powerful, so destructive, that if we ever manage to translate them, they would reveal moments when entire regions of the universe were torn apart. Moments that dwarf even black hole activity. And while this might sound like science fiction, the truth is that our instruments are still young, our understanding still limited, and every major discovery in astronomy has shown us that the universe is capable of far more than we previously imagined. And this uncertainty is what makes the silence of space feel deceptive. Because we now know that behind that silence lies a constant flow of information, signals passing through us without leaving a trace, like whispers in a language we do not yet speak. And once you accept that, you begin to question what else we are missing, what forces are shaping reality right now beyond our detection, what sounds are passing through Earth, through your body, through your very atoms, completely unnoticed. And this is where the fear becomes deeply personal, because it reminds us that human perception is not a window to objective reality, but a narrow filter shaped by survival, tuned to just enough information to keep us alive on one planet around one star. And everything outside that range exists regardless of whether we acknowledge it. And the scariest sound in the universe becomes a symbol of that limitation, a reminder that reality does not need our awareness to function. And yet, despite this, we continue to listen, to push our instruments further, to stretch our understanding, because there is something profoundly human about refusing to remain ignorant, even when knowledge is unsettling. And perhaps that is why stories like this resonate so deeply, because they sit at the edge of fear and wonder, reminding us that while the universe may be indifferent, our curiosity is not. And as long as we continue to listen, to translate, and to try to understand these cosmic sounds, we are participating in something larger than ourselves, something that connects us to the deepest rhythms of existence. And maybe that is the final quiet truth behind the scariest sound of the universe, that it does not exist to frighten us, but to remind us that we are part of a vast, vibrating cosmos, and that even in the face of overwhelming scale and power, the act of listening itself gives our brief existence meaning. And now, as we reach the end of this journey into the deepest, most haunting sounds of the universe, it is impossible not to feel a mixture of awe and unease, because what the Perseus black hole and other cosmic vibrations reveal is a truth both terrifying and beautiful. The universe is alive with energy. It is constantly moving, resonating, creating and destroying on scales far beyond human comprehension. And yet it does all of this without malice, without intention, simply existing according to the laws of physics. And our ability to perceive even a fraction of it, to translate these vibrations into sound we can understand, is nothing short of miraculous, because it gives us a fleeting connection to forces that operate over millions and billions of years, forces that have shaped galaxies, stars, and even the conditions for life itself. And when you think about it this way, the scariest sound in the universe becomes more than a terrifying moan or a low hum. It becomes a bridge, a link between our tiny human consciousness and the vast, indifferent cosmos, reminding us that while we are small, temporary, and fragile, we are also capable of curiosity, understanding, and wonder. And that is perhaps the most profound feeling of all, because in listening to the echoes of black holes, the whispers of neutron stars, and the faint afterglow of the Big Bang, We are participating in something eternal, joining in a cosmic story that began before us and will continue long after we are gone. And even though this knowledge can make the universe feel enormous, cold, and frightening, it also gives it depth, richness, and a strange kind of intimacy, because for a moment in translating these ancient vibrations into sound, we are not separate from the cosmos. We are part of its rhythm, its motion, its resonance, and we realize that the scariest sound in the universe is not simply something to fear, but something to listen to reflect upon, and to let remind us of our place in the grand tapestry of existence, that fleeting, fragile, yet incredibly meaningful moment when awareness meets infinity. And in that moment, the universe is not silent, it is speaking, and we are finally able to hear it.